All right, YouTube, once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast. We're talking Auburn football. Go ahead and like the video. Go ahead and click the bell and click it twice so you can hear all of the content here on Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. As always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger or Eagle. Okay, so it's that time of the year. Auburn is in between basketball. Matter of fact, basketball is about to round up. Auburn finally gets a win after two straight double-digit losses. Auburn, very interestingly enough, Auburn with a 20-plus win record, but still a lot of questions to be answered going into the Southeastern Conference tournament, which will be coming up here pretty soon. Auburn still has some pretty key matchups, especially against Kentucky, a rematch against Kentucky, but this time they will have to travel up to Rupp Arena. Best wishes to the Auburn men's basketball team, War Eagle. Also, Auburn is approaching spring football. I think arguably one of the more competitive spring football trainings because, of course, you have an overlap in talent between the 2018, 2019, and now the 2020 recruiting class, which will have double-digit players who will participate in spring football via early enrollee status. I think that's going to make the spring game a lot more valuable to the Auburn Tigers because you have so many pieces to the puzzle as to who's going to be there. Then we forget about offensive linemen like Keandre Jones from last year. We also think about Derek Brown's little brother, Cameron Brown. We're going to see what kind of role that he will play. But then you have, after all of that is said and done, you look at the Auburn 2020 schedule for football, then you start to that dreadful word called expectation. Every year, fans look at Auburn's schedule, look at their respective team schedule. They look at, how the team should probably do based on maybe their expectations. Some of it is more of a wish than an expectation. But when we analyze this Auburn football schedule in 2020, we just look at the meat of it mainly. I mean, you start the season off with Alcorn State, FCS school out of Lorman, Mississippi, participates in the SWAC conference in football. Big shout out to the SWAC conference. They play a pretty decent brand of football, especially for the level that they compete at. But we don't expect them to have much of a chance against Auburn. You look at Auburn in their past feats against FCS schools, taking on teams out of the SWAC, Alabama A&M and Alabama State. Those wins were won by sizable margins, so we don't expect much action there. Now, the interesting game to start the season off with, for the most part, is the North Carolina game. A very intriguing game for the Auburn Tigers. Doesn't have that same level of anxiety that, say, a Clemson or a USC or, Washington or Oregon, especially with it being the second game of the season. This year, you're coming into this particular game, a game like this, an early Power 5 conference football game. You come with a little bit more experience, a lot. You know what to expect for the most part out of Bo Nix as a quarterback. This time last year, Auburn going through a crazy quarterback battle between Joey Gatewood and Bo Nix. And in the fans' mind, that battle was still going on, honestly, until Joey Gatewood decided to hit the transfer portal, and that's when the battle, at least in the fans' minds, ended. So you have a lot more solidarity there. Bo Nix actually began to gain confidence as the season went on. He didn't make a lot of mistakes. Started to really plant his feet as a Power 5 quarterback, which makes this even more intriguing going into the 2020 football season as to how Bo Nix will take complete control over this team. Because if you look at some of the factors involved, it has to be a certain level of anxiety for a quarterback when you have another guy that you feel, and you know it, this guy's a 4-star, almost a 5-star recruit as well at quarterback, who the fans are continuously, every time you make a mistake, if you breathe wrong, if you sneeze too hard, Joey Gatewood is the better choice. You should have went with Joey Gatewood anyway. You have this elephant in the room, in the locker room, on the sideline. This guy obviously feeling like he should be playing, and that is Joey Gatewood. and you continue that in the back of your mind, once Joey Gatewood leaves, that gives Bo Nix a little bit more confidence to say, hey, this is my football team. Not a football team that I'm constantly having to win over because we have another guy who is just as good, just as athletic as I am, who could possibly take my position, even though the coaches are saying that he won't. But the elephant is still in the room, and now that that elephant is out of the room, Bo Nix can compete a little bit more uninterrupted by all of those types of shadows. And then you got the defense. You got a situation where you're having to replace a good deal on defense, but you got a lot of talent returning. So fans and their expectations, of course, when you're in the bottom line expectation is you want to win SEC championships every year and compete for a college football national championship. That's the baseline expectation. Anything less than that is sometimes viewed as unacceptable, because anything less than that is usually considered a consolation prize, so to speak. And, no one wants to just settle for, a 9-4 season and a trip to the Outback Bowl every year in and year out. At a certain point, for pride's sake, for, just really loyalty to the team, you want more. And at a certain point, you want more, especially when you've experienced more. You look at back in 2010 when Auburn unexpectedly wins the national championship with Cam Newton, and then 3 years later, Auburn having the opportunity to win 2 national championships in a 3-year span. As a matter of fact, there's several players on that football team that would have had 2 national championships if Auburn was able to pull off the game against Florida State. So when you look at the expectations going into the 2020 season, the sky is definitely the limit for the Auburn Tigers as to how this schedule is set up. You talk about a situation where, you got North Carolina as your Power 5, your strong Power 5 out-of-conference game to begin with. I think that's a winnable football game. Then you meet Georgia in Georgia. The schedule actually switched to where Auburn will be playing Georgia mid-season, which I think gives the opportunity for both teams really to give their best shot, I think, from an injury standpoint in that regard. And also, when you look at the Alabama and Georgia rivalry, there's a lot of anxiety for that particular game. And then to have to play these two teams, Alabama and Georgia 2 weeks apart, I think can be a little taxing on the Auburn Tigers. Although, with the opportunity still in hand late in the season, Auburn will take on LSU and Alabama to end the season. Both of those will be tough matchups, but at the same time, going into November, the SEC West will not be decided until the last week of the season for the most part, if tradition holds true, where LSU, Alabama, and Auburn are competitors in the SEC West. Bottom line is that last week is going to determine who the SEC West champion is, who represents the SEC West in the SEC championship, and quite possibly, usually, at least for the past few years, the college football playoff representative out of the SEC has come from the SEC West. So we will see how those things come about. A favorable schedule or a manageable schedule is definitely at hand for the Auburn Tigers. Go ahead and like the video, comment, and subscribe to Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger.